Hi, this is Carrie with Canary Quilts, and I want to introduce you to the Charla Shoulder Bag. This is a pattern that I've been making for about 10 years now. I developed it back in 2011. I started selling these bags on Etsy, and I've probably made about 1,000 of these bags. It is a pattern that I have never written down, and I finally have. So I'm going to show you how to put this bag together. I'm going to show you the materials I used. I show you how I do the top stitching on the gusset and how I put the rivets on. You don't need rivets for this. You can sew this strap shut. This can be made with cotton, it can be made with vinyl, and it's pretty simple to put together. So the description below has the links on how to grab this pattern. You can grab it today and you can come back here and make this bag. So thank you very much for watching this video. Okay, to get started on the Charla Shoulder Bag, you'll need to head over, grab the pattern, cut out the pattern piece, and it comes in 2 pieces of paper. You have to butt up the paper here and tape it. I'm going to go through the materials I have here for my bag, which is I'm going to be using cork, and these are for the straps, and then the cork for the gusset. I've got my O-rings that I'm going to need. Oh, I need 2 more. I need 4 O-rings and my magnetic snap. This is the zipper I'm going to be using on the inside. The zipper pocket. And on all my lining pieces I have used a Pellin SF 101 type of interfacing. And there's the zipper pocket. Here's the gusset. And depending on your fabric, I cut it with the fabric, so I just cut 1 piece, but you could cut 2 pieces and then eventually sew them together in the middle. My lining body pieces, again, I've already fused on my interfacing. This is for the O-ring connectors that are going to be at the top of the bag. They're going to go up here and hold the O-rings, which then hold the straps. So I have also put interfacing on the back of this. And then here's my exterior body pieces. And on this I used Pellin Thermo Lamb fusible fleece. So we're going to get started with the lining first. So to get started, I am going to take my pocket piece with the interfacing on it, and I'm going to fold it in half and find the center and mark it. Then I'm going to mark it in the center, and then I'm going to, on the back of it, onto the interfacing, I've got it's straight across the top here, so I'm going to come down 1.5 inches. I'm going to line my ruler up down here on the 2-inch mark, and my ruler's 1/2 inch, so it'll be coming down 1.5 inches, and I want a 6-inch opening. So I'm going to line my 3 up here with my center, and then just go from the 6 over here to the 0 and mark it. And I'm using a friction pen, which will erase with heat. And then I'm going to mark my 1/4 inch line on the inside where you're going to be cutting to the corners. So then I'm going to find the center of my lining zipper to be 3 inches down from the top. 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to line up this top line 3 inches down from the top. And then I'm going to go over and I'm going to sew around the outside rectangle. Okay, I've got my rectangle sewn. I don't know if you can see the stitches. They're the same color pretty much. But so it's sewn around the outside. Now what I want to do is cut down this center line. And then when you get to the end of the line, you will cut as close as you can to the corners without cutting the thread. Now we're going to take it over to our iron, and we're going to pull it, we're going to pull this through first. And lay it out just like that with the pocket on the back of the lining body. And you can do some finger pressing here and manipulate your fabric so that it's not wrinkled before you take it over to your iron. Okay, we've got this ironed, the opening, and now I'm going to take this double-sided wash away 1/4 inch tape and I'm going to lay it on each side. Of the zipper opening, and that's what's going to hold my zipper in place while I am sewing. So get the backs peeled off your tape, then take your zipper, and on the left hand side with your body facing down, pocket facing up, take your stop and just butt it right up against the edge of the left hand side. Center your zipper, and then I zip it right up to the other edge and hold it down. So there, now the tape holds your zipper in place. And we'll go over and we are going to sew right next to the edge of the zipper opening. Okay, there's a zipper, and you can see how close to the edge I sewed it. And then I also went ahead and put the other pocket piece on and just sewed a square right around the whole thing. So now we're ready to put our gusset on, and I start with the pocket side and I mark the bottom center of my body piece. And then I mark the center of my gusset. So I'm just going to fold it in half and mark each side. I'm going to put the two marks together, and then I'm going to start just pinning all the way around. And once you get to this corner, you can clip about 1/8 of an inch here. Put a bunch of clips in, and that will help you turn the corner. Okay, so this is what it'll look like when you have your gusset pinned on, and you will have extra up here at the top, and don't worry about that. I made it that way specifically. We'll be cutting it later. And then, I don't know if you can see it, but there are little clips in the fabric to help it turn the corner. So now I am going to sew a 1/2 inch around the whole entire edge of this bag. Okay, I got my gusset sewn onto my pocket side, and then I trimmed it. And then I went over and I pinned the gusset onto the other side in the exact same way I did the first one. And the only other thing I'm going to do on this is I'm going to come down from the top here about 2.5 inches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm going to mark 6 inches down from here. So I'm going to leave a 6-inch opening to turn the bag in. So you'll sew from up the top to this first mark, and then you'll start again here and go all the way around. And another tip, if you're comfortable, is it's a 1/2 inch seam, and you can start up here at 1/2 inch, but as you come into the purse, you could do a 5/8 inch seam, but then just make sure you get back to a 1/2 inch up here on the edge. And that way it'll make your lining a little bit smaller, and it might just fit a little bit better into your bag, but it's not a big deal. But that's just a little tip. So I'm going to go over and get this gusset sewn in. So we've got the gusset sewn onto both sides, and I've left my opening here. I've trimmed it, but I didn't trim it near the opening because I want to have that 1/2 inch to be able to turn. So now this is where we are going to cut our tops off. And I just cut straight across, even with the body. That way you're not trying to guess it. You're not trying to work it in. You've got plenty to work with. So there. Now I'm going to put in my magnetic snaps. So I lay, this is different than most bags you do. I put my seams together and then I lay it down, and it's 9 inches across the top. So 1, 2, 3, 4.5 is center. I go to the center and I measure down 2 inches, and that's where I'm going to mark it. Take your clip and you can put the center right over the dot, and you can mark where you will clip. So then just put a small clip right there where you marked it. I'm going to put this in between this and the back body because I'm going to use some fray check. And that will help the fabric from fraying over time where we made the cuts. The interfacing probably will help, but this is just extra security. So on the side without the pocket, I will use the male magnetic snap. And I put it through there. I just have some extra cork here, which is really strong and it's thin. And I just cut slits in that, and then put the fastener over top and fold it down. So now what I do on the other side, keep those together, the seams, lay it down. You don't have to measure this one. I just feel for the little knob and I mark it. And then I'm going to cut that and do the exact same thing I did with the other one. Cut it, put this in, fray check, put my female side in, and then you can use anything for the back piece here. You can use some interfacing, some foam, vinyl, just something that's going to be strong enough to hold it, and then clip it. And that way you know these two are going to match up with your seam straight here. So that's how I do my zipper pocket and my magnetic snap. And then your lining's done. So next up is the exterior of our bag, and I'm going to take the 2 gusset pieces I cut. And because one piece isn't long enough to go all the way around, I'm going to sew 2 pieces together. And this is cork, and you can't iron cork, so I'm going to sew a 1/2 inch seam here, and then I'm going to fold it over and do a top stitch so it holds this seam allowance down. So I'm going to get this sewn and I'm going to get a top stitch, and I'll show you what it looks like. Here's my 2 gusset pieces sewn together, 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then I top stitched the seam allowance down. And I used a top stitch thread, and I set my stitch length at about 3.5 so it looks a little more professional. So now this seam becomes our center of our gusset. So we will mark the center of our exterior body pieces, and we're going to attach the gusset just like we did with the lining. And when you get to the corner, you'll want to clip so you can turn it on the corner. So you can see clipped edges just really help it turn the corner and not get wrinkled or bunched. I'm over here at the machine and I've got my gusset pinned on, and I wanted to show you how I sew that on at a 1/2 inch. And I'm using a regular foot because I'm using it on the back of the cork, which is soft. It's like material. So I'm going to go back to a standard stitch, back stitch the top. And you can see, because I have a 1/2 inch, I have a 1/2 inch seam, that I'm able to kind of move the rest of this fabric around so I don't get any pinching or bunching. So that's how we do the seam. Now I'm going to show you how I top stitch around the edge. And this side is the easier side because we can open it up like this. But I put my seam, I turned my entire seam over towards the gusset. And then I'm going to switch my thread to a top stitching thread. Okay, I've got my top stitching thread in. I've got my seams folded over towards my gusset, and I just kind of pull it so it pulls it tight against the seam. I'm going to set my stitch length at about 3.5 so it looks a little more professional. And then I'm going to use my foot here as the edge of my guide. And I'm just going to use the edge of my foot and go along the edge of the cork here. And just keep sewing all the way around, making sure your seam allowance is pushed towards the gusset. So then that's what your top stitching looks like, and it flattens your seam for you also. Okay, so I finished sewing the other side of the gusset on, and I'm going to fold, just like I did before, fold the seam towards the gusset, and I'm going to sew it down. The only difference is you're going to have to kind of work inside the bag now that the other side is sewn on. But it's not difficult. Just go slow. I'm using my regular foot because this cork is so soft that my regular foot will go across it. Just test out your materials. You may need a walking foot or a Teflon foot to be able to work with this. Definitely a walking foot with vinyl for sure. So I'm going to put my stitch at 3.5 and we're going to head on out. You'll just kind of keep the purse bunched up in front of you, and I'm using my thumb on my right side to push that seam allowance towards the cork. I'm using my left hand to pull the cork to the left to flatten it out. I also have my needle down, which helps when I stop. It keeps the fabric in place so I can manipulate it. So there we go. It's hard to see, but yeah, I was just kind of working in the inside that bag. So next up is the strap connector, and I went over and did all of this on my iron. But the first thing I did was I ironed it in half like that. And then I went back and opened it, and I took the long edge and folded it towards the crease I just made on both sides, and then I was able to just iron that all these sides to the center like this. So then all we have to do is, and you can iron it again here, is turn it and clip it, and then I'm going to go over and top stitch down both sides, just right along each edge. And then I'm going to come back and cut it. So once you've got it top stitched, you're going to cut out 4 of these. Yeah, just about perfect. Now we want to attach our O-ring connectors onto our bag. So taking a connector, put your O-ring in it, fold it in half, and then I'm going to measure 1 inch in from this cork seam. And that's where I'm going to pin my strap connector on. I'm going to do this for all 4 of them. Now that you have these pinned on, take them over to your sewing machine and baste it. Okay, now we have our connectors, our O-ring connectors on. We can open our bag right side out. I love that orange against that blue and green. But I'm a big color person. So we are going to now put our bag inside our lining. So it depends now if you've got a front or back to your bag. I don't really. I'll make the tree the front and your pocket's going to be the back. So put the back, what you deem the back side of your purse, towards the pocket of the lining. Make sure your O-ring connectors are tucked inside, and then just start. I line up these 2 seams, and you can nest them because we sewed the cork seam towards the cork, and then you can take the lining seam and just fold it away from the cork, and then it'll just pop in there like a Lego together. And you can feel it with your finger when it does that. And I do all 4 seams first. Now you can just straighten out in between those seams and clip it. And if you did everything right, it should fit. So I go a 1/2 inch seam around the top, and then I actually double stitch it, or you can just do a double stitch over the O-ring connectors just to give it extra strength there. Okay, so I've stitched all the way around the top of my bag, and it's ready to pull through. And if you leave a big enough opening, you aren't going to stress out the fabrics by pulling them through. It really kind of depends on the bag, how big an opening. So this is a bigger bag, so the opening can be bigger. So I go around and check to make sure I caught my fabrics. I should have, but every once in a while they can sneak away from you. Yep, I just have a couple strings I need to cut. Since this is good and I don't have my top stitch thread in, I'm going to want to sew this shut. So you just kind of grab your fingers on each side of that seam and pull it shut and fold it. I finger press it, you can iron it. If it doesn't want to stay together, then throw a couple clips on it. And then sew this shut with a stitch that's right next to that opening. Make sure you catch both sides of it. So I've sewn my lining shut, and you can see how close I got. So now we can tuck it inside. So since we can't iron cork, you're just going to have to work on your seam allowance here with your fingers. Get these clipped. And I just go around and fold it over, and then I use my fingers to separate that seam. And you can use the strap connectors to kind of pull your seam back up and straighten it. So once you're ready, after you've done all your finger pressing, you can now take it over to your machine, put your top stitching in, use a larger stitch. And I go about 1/4 inch down around, and then I'll go about another stitch about 1/8 inch below that one. So I have 2 stitches going around the top of my bag. So here is my top stitching. Like I said, I did 1/4 inch from the top and then 1/8 inch down from that. And the reason I do a double is for looks, but it also gives strength to your connectors here. So up next are the straps. We're done. Okay, I've got my straps here, and I've cut them to 24 inches. And what I want to do is I want to mark a center line. So since I have 2-inch straps, my center line is going to be 1 inch. And just so you can see it. And the reason we're going to do that is we're going to fold it just like we did the connectors, but we can't iron it. So we need to have some kind of visual line to pull our side pieces into the center. And I work with both pieces at the same time. And I get them in the center and I clip them. And then I just keep moving down the line. Now that you have your strap pinned, we're going to top stitch just like we did the connectors, except we're going to turn the corner over here. We're going to turn the corner, come over here, and go down the other side. And we're going to turn both corners because we'll be seeing these ends. So you want to close them off like that. So I'm going to get this top stitch, show you what it looks like. Here's my strap with the top stitching, and you can see that I top stitched the ends also, because you will see those. So now we put them on our bag. I'll do the other strap in a minute. You'll put them on your bag, so I take the bottom one, make sure your strap connector's straight, find the bottom of your strap and fold it up, what is that, about 1.5 inches. And then I clip it. And then you go to the other strap connector on the bottom. You want to make sure your strap is straight around and that you're also putting your bottom thread, the bottom of your strap on the O-ring, and you'll fold that up about 1.5 inches. So that's how you do your straps. So at this point I will do rivets, because that's what I like to do, and trim them if they don't look good. Or you could sew it right here to tack it on. It's totally up to you how you feel, what you want to do. But I'm going to put rivets in. So I'm going to get the other strap done and then we'll get it all riveted in. And that's my rivets right there. So I'm going to show you how I do my rivets. I've got my strap ready to go just like the first one. And I am going to only put holes in the top of the strap right now. So I've got the stitching line right there and I want to go below it. So I'm just going to move it over, and this is where I'm going to put my first rivet hole. And then I'm going to go down about 1/2 inch and put another hole. So now I'm going to pull it over, line them back up, and I'm going to mark through the holes I just made where I want my holes to be so that they'll line up when I put the rivets in. Sometimes when you're trying to go through both, like if I were to try to go through both of these at the same time, it tends to scoot, and I've just found that by doing this separately like this, your strap will line up. So then I just take my rivets and I put the pegged one through first, or through the bottom. And then I put the cap on the top of my strap. I just personally think it looks better that way. I don't know what the difference is. It just looks flatter or something. And then I take, I don't even know what that's called, but it's used to pound the rivets together. And I'll put it on top and just give it good 3 smacks. 3 good smacks. And that's how I put my rivets in. I'll do the same thing on the other side. There it is, the bag's done. I did the rivets in my straps, but like I said, you could just sew a straight line there and hold the strap together also. So, not too hard to put together. So I will put some glamour shots of the bag in next, and thank you very much for watching this video. And if you happen to make this bag, head over to my Facebook page and leave a picture. I'd love to see how it turned out. Still trimming.